All right, everyone. And, well, you can't say we're not dedicated. Welcome back to another Wagner virtual tasting series. And, hey, when we decide to be out in the vineyard, it doesn't matter what the weather is. We're going to be out in the vineyard. And as you can see, if you joined us last time we were outside, it snowed, and now it's snowing again. But now we're in a little different spot here at the Caywood East Vineyard. And I am joined by Mr. John Wagner.
How's it going, everybody?
We are, like I said, coming to you live from Caywood East. We also have some new microphones that hopefully will help audio issues we had last time we were outside. If you can hear us, let us know. If let us know as well, and we'll look to fix that. Quick shot here at what we're going to be drinking and talking about. This is the 2018 Caywood East Dry Riesling from Wagner. 92 points on Wine Enthusiast. But there's a lot that goes into what you see right there in the bottle, starting with what it stands on right now. And I'm going to pan over here. Just off to the side, you get a pretty good look at all of the shale and sediment layers that are built up. And this is where I'm going to turn it over to John. It looks like audio's coming in loud and clear, which is great. I'm going to turn it over to John to start building from the ground up, or even under the ground up, how we get to Caywood East that we drink in the bottle.
Yeah, a lot goes into it, and a lot of people will go out in the vineyard and show you the first inch of soil and talk about what the soil structure is, but we really go all the way back down to the sedimentary layers that were laid down millions of years ago. So this is an ancient seabed, and millions of years ago it laid down these sedimentary layers of shale, which are pretty easy to fracture. So that's the underlying bedrock for this whole site. Caywood East is about a 16-acre vineyard that we have here. So the soils from there up, it's kind of a unique site for us because the majority of our farm is Honeoye loam, and this site has some Howard soil on it, and it also has some Lansing soil. So it's kind of a unique site for us, and it's got those three soil types, very unique. All three of those soils are well drained, which is critical to farming grapes in the Finger Lakes, especially vinifera varieties. We're going to talk a little bit about what we did to this site. When you look at it, I mean, Alex, you can pan out to the vineyard here. It does look like a relatively young vineyard. This is 15 years old, but it's got a long history of growing grapes. 5 generations of my family have farmed grapes here on the east side of Seneca Lake. My grandfather, my father farmed on this site, and now my son and I farm on it. And it's pretty neat to be out there farming grapes on soils that many generations of your family have done the same thing.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about the history and the Wagner history on this site. Just want to shout out those who have seen where they're watching from. We got some Pennsylvania, we got some Maine. Hope you guys are, my sister's asking if I'm wearing gloves. I am wearing gloves this time. I hope you guys in Maine and Pennsylvania are ready for the snow that's coming down. It's probably way worse than what we got here. We picked this spot because there is a really nice view of the lake, Seneca Lake. Hopefully by the end of this video this squall will have moved and you'll be able to see it. But at the very least, like I mentioned here, Caywood East, 2018 Caywood East is what we're drinking now. If you're a fan of Wagner's and have been for some time, you would have noticed that 2012 was the first year that we made a single varietal Riesling here from Caywood East. However, as John is about to say, the history of Caywood East and the Wagners goes back way farther than just 2012.
Yeah, so my grandfather settled here in the early 1900s. His father had farmed grapes on the east side of Seneca Lake. He settled here on this site, and he had native varieties growing on this field. So Concord and Niagara, as well as peaches and cherries. So it's been farmed by my family for over 100 years in fruit. And in 2004, 2005, we had really decided we were going to expand our Riesling acreage. We're extremely bullish about Riesling, and if you haven't picked that up in our previous videos, I'm probably going to say it in every single one of the videos that we do. The versatility of this variety is amazing. We are sitting on a world-class site to be able to grow Riesling, and you know, the history of our winemaking goes back 40 years now, 41, and we've been talking about making world-class wines for all 40 years, and it has definitely been proven out. I mean, we've won some international acclaim with these wines. So we have identified that Riesling is the signature variety of the Finger Lakes. And so in 2005, we made a conscious decision that we were going to expand our acreage on Riesling, and this was one of the sites that we picked. A lot goes into site selection for a vineyard. Every real estate agent in New York State says that every piece of property around the lake is great grape land, and that's not necessarily true. There has to be a lot of things right to be able to grow grapes, and one of the things is these deeper soils. So the three soil types that I mentioned are all deep soils, meaning there's a lot of soil depth before you get to some kind of a bedrock obstruction, and that is key to getting vines to establish a deep root system. So what we're trying to do is plant these young vines that have a very small root system and get them to establish a root system down at least 4 feet deep. Some of these vines will have an 8-foot deep root system. And when you can get vines established that deeply in a site, they have a lot of resistance to droughts and things like that, because the root system is very extensive. And these are all dry farmed. We don't irrigate any of our vineyards. So that's key to getting that healthy root system down in. So one of the things once we identified this site that we were going to plant Riesling on here, one of the big changes that we've done in the last 15-20 years is establishing a drainage system underground. So the three soil types, the Honeoye, the Howard, and the Lansing, are all inherently pretty well drained soils. But what our first step is to take a backhoe on this site, and we dug test pits throughout this entire 16-acre field. About 6 feet deep, probably about 100 holes were dug out here, and we get down in those holes and we really look at what soils we have. We know what the soil maps say we have, but we want to see the individual pockets. These are glacier deposited soils. So about 11,000 years ago was the last ice age, and this site where we're standing was covered with a mile thick sheet of ice. And that sheet of ice scraped down from the north, and it scoured the land, and it deposited soils in some of the depressions along the way, and it dug the Finger Lakes, which were narrow riverbeds. It carved them deeper, and if the squall passes and we can actually see Seneca Lake, we'll talk a lot about the influences that body of water has on our ability to grow vinifera grapes here. And it is crucial. Seneca Lake is very critical to us being able to do that.
Well, let's get this question from Jennifer here out of the way. And again, we're here at Caywood East. As you can tell, it's some fun weather that we're dealing with today. And Jennifer's question is one that we're definitely going to address probably several times. Anything extra that you have to do today at this time of year to prepare for your vineyards, given that it's snowing and it is May?
Yeah, I got a couple props, and maybe we can walk over to the vineyard and look at them. But yeah, it's a nice segue. Thank you, Jennifer.
Good to get the blood flowing again, moving around a little bit.
So Alex is going to hone in here a little bit. This is a Riesling vine, and these are the buds. Okay, so that is the potential for fruit for this coming growing season. And you can see that they're swollen up. And when they're at this stage, they're pretty vulnerable. They still have a little resistance to cold, but a lot less resistance than they did a couple weeks ago when they were very closed up. So they're starting to open up. And then I got a cane off of another vine up here out of the woods. This is an old Concord vine that was left over from where my grandfather farmed. So you can see how much further the Concord bud is out. And we're starting to see some green tissue. Hopefully you guys can see that at the base of the bud. And that green tissue is extremely sensitive. So right now we're at about 33 or 34 degrees. It's balmy.
That's it.
And we were last week or 2 weeks ago when we did the de-hilling video, we thought, well, it can't get a whole lot worse than this. At least that's behind us, but it is a little worse. Predicted low for tonight is 28 degrees. So very concerning. If we had had 1 or 2 more warm days prior to this, these Riesling buds would probably be at the stage that these are, with a lot more green tissue showing. So they are extremely fragile at this point and susceptible to a spring frost. So that's one of the reasons that we are able to grow consistently on this site, because of the proximity of Seneca Lake. Huge body of water. So when I see predicted 28 low for tonight, I think, well, that's very concerning, but hopefully we're going to get a couple degrees moderation from that. And we're supposed to have, it's supposed to be breezy throughout the night. And what we really fear is a calm night with no wind, no air movement, and a clear night. If we've got a full moon and a clear night and it's very still, we got a lot of frost potential. But one of the nice things about this site, I don't know if you can get it, if you pan like from the top of the vineyard all the way down, it's a very steep sloping site. And it's our highest elevation vinifera site. We are 1,000 feet above sea level at the top of this vineyard. So the top of the lake is 446 above sea level, so we're about 550 feet above the lake. And we're able to consistently grow vinifera here because of one of the things we have is superior air drainage. So on those calm nights where we might have frost potential, that cold air is more dense than warm air. So cold air comes down, and if you're on a flat site, the cold air will pool next to the ground where the vines are, and you'll actually have warmer air up above it, but you have a temperature inversion where the cold air is sitting down next to your vines and you can frost your buds. If these buds that we just showed the close-up of get frosted tonight or any other night, that's our crop for 2020. So we are right on the edge of being able to grow these varieties. But this steep sloping site, that cold dense air comes down, and instead of pooling next to the vines, it rushes down the hill and it goes out over Seneca Lake, which is this open body of water. The lake gives up its heat, the air gets warmed, and it raises up, and it's a natural convection cycle. So even on nights where we don't have a breeze, we get that natural air drainage flowing down the hill, and it keeps the air moving. So keep our fingers crossed. A little snow actually isn't going to hurt us tonight, to have a little moisture on things. So I don't want to jinx myself, but I'm hoping that we'll skate by this one.
Yep, and getting some prayers in the comments as well. People are thinking of us. Now, you mentioned air drainage earlier. You did mention tile drainage also, so let's dive a little bit into that and how, when you were replanting this vineyard 15 years ago, how that was such an integral step and something that just was a little different then than it is now.
Yeah, so as we transitioned from some of the varieties that my grandfather and my father grew, if we were typically planting this vineyard 40 years ago, we would have plowed the field and planted the vines and not put a lot of underground drainage in. We would have put some in. If there was a notorious wet spot in the corner of the field, we might have put one drain tile in to drain that one wet spot. So what is drain tile? On I throw it around, and everybody in the grape industry talks about drain tile because we all know what it is, but
not actual tile, as I
no.
came to learn.
Well, so this is an old one here, a hexagonal one, but it's called drain tile because it was originally clay tile. Clay fired and formed into these 1 foot long sections, and the purpose of this is to control the seasonal water table of your land. So any crop that you're trying to farm, when we dug those test pits that I talked about, we got down in those test pits. We looked at soil structure, and we also looked at rooting depth. So any of the vegetation that was on the field, we looked at how deep the roots went, and that's an indication of how high the seasonal water table it gets to. So if you see rooting depth that's 4 feet deep in those test pits, that's a pretty good idea that the seasonal water table is down that low, and you're pretty good for grapes. If you see rooting depth that's much shallower than that, well, you can supplement the natural drainage of the soil by digging a trench. We typically put this in, we try to get it down about 4 feet deep. So dig a trench, we lay these tiles down in the trench. This is a newer one, went to round. We would lay them with a slight gap in between the clay tile, and as that seasonal water table raised up, like for instance now the water table is pretty high in the spring, it would find those seams in between the clay tile. It would get inside the piping, and then it would be piped to daylight or one of these gullies along the side of the vineyard. So one of the nice advances over the last 30 or 40 years has been this traditional clay tile has been replaced by plastic perforated drain tile. So we still call it tile even though it's plastic at this point, but if you get in here close, this is 4-inch drain tile, and you can see it has small perforation slits in the side of it. So we also try to get this 4 feet deep in the ground, and as that seasonal water table comes up, the water finds these slits in the drain tile, enters the inside of the pipe, and it's an underground plumbing system that we can control the level of the water table underneath this block. So I have this kind of cool map, which is getting wet.
As we all are.
All right. So all these lines on the map represent drain tile that's underneath this vineyard. There is 6 miles of underground plastic piping in this vineyard. So we are standing right about over here, and you can see on some areas these tile lines are spaced farther apart, and in some areas they're spaced very close together. And so the reason for that is after we dug those series of test pits in this vineyard, we identified small areas where we felt we've got heavy soils, we've got the potential for seasonal water table coming up higher to the surface, and we need to space these tiles closer together. So in some areas those are 10 feet apart. So every single row almost has a tile running down it. In other areas, like right here in this corner, is where we have the Howard soil, and it's very deep gravel. So we spaced the tile lines further apart here. So anyways, that was a huge investment. It's an extremely long process to get that drain tile in, get it established, but it pays big dividends, and really we have one chance to do it right. When we plant a vineyard, this isn't a decision that we will live with for 6 months or 6 years. This is a decision we're going to live with for 50 years. And I expect and hope that this vineyard is producing fruit long after I'm gone. And maybe we'll continue to learn some great techniques out here. We're always learning, and that's one thing. We'll talk a lot about the history of what we have done and what we have learned, but we're constantly looking for new ideas. My son Ian has brought some great fresh ideas, and it's super to, you may have to look at like 10 new ideas to get one good one, but at least we're always looking to see how we can do it better, how we can be as sustainable as possible. This soil, like I said before, it's the same topsoil, the same 6 inches of topsoil that my grandfather made his living on and my father made his living on. So we guard the soil. Just a little sidebar to show you how far back our history goes. This is,
and how far back it goes at this direct site.
Yeah. So this is a grape hoe that my grandfather used to hill up and hill down vines on this site, and it's pretty neat. This is Syracuse grape hoe, patented June 24th, 1890. So this is the bracket for where the hoe would have been a horse-drawn implement, and it's just pretty cool when you think about the fact that we're still making our living the same way that you know five generations have done, and on the exact same dirt. So you know, this dirt, if we protect it, we talked a little bit in the video 2 weeks ago about permanent sod cover, and you can kind of see it now. We've got a little snow coming down on it, but 2 weeks ago we were talking about dehilling, and you can see now as you look down the row, you can see the entire vine. You can see the base of the vine. So again, we've got our graft union down here, and that's 2 weeks ago. That dirt was up here, and we were just starting the dehilling operation when we saw the dehiller. Ian ran the dehiller for us, and we've had a great 10 days of weather, and we've been able to accomplish 95% of the dehilling at this point. We were hoping to be done this week. We still do have about 10 acres left to do. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's kind of critical. A lot of these operations we feel are necessary to be sustainable in the Finger Lakes. So having a good site, number one. Well-drained soil, good air drainage, taking the necessary time to analyze the soils and establish that underground drain system. So all those decisions don't show. So then
we haven't even talked about the actual vines themselves.
Haven't even talked about them yet. So then it's this you know, when you're talking about a 50-year decision, you got to pick the variety, and we had already had a long history with Riesling. My father planted Riesling back in 1978. Our winemakers had worked with it over the decades, and we really saw it shine in a lot of different growing conditions. So dry years, wet years, cold years, hot years, and it was really then when we saw, hey, this is a variety that we can make distinctive varietal driven wines year in and year out sustainably. And that's what we want to be. We don't want to plant a variety that's just the flavor of the week, and then we find out 3 years from now that we can't grow it, it doesn't survive our winters. Riesling has pretty good winter hardiness. So we talk about these buds coming out in the spring, and if the vine has survived the winter well, got to brush the snow off so you can see them, but each one of these buds, I can tell just by looking at it that they're alive, and they're pushing every single bud on that entire cane, which is awesome at this point. If we had some winter damage throughout the winter, these buds can be killed by temperature fluctuations or ultimate cold temperature, and sometimes in the spring you might see a live bud here and 2 or 3 dead ones and a couple live ones out at the end of the cane. So real nice even bud swell here. We got to get, knock on wood, we got to get through tonight and maybe a couple other cold nights. Our predicted low is 28 degrees at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. So hopefully the wind will keep blowing, and it won't get quite down to 28. So
I'm going to do a quick check-in with everyone who's watching. Let us know if you can hear everything all right. Let us know where you're watching from, what you're drinking tonight. I also want to go back real quick, to this artifact. This is not something that you've been hanging on to on the off chance that we'll talk about it, 10 years down the road. This is something you recently just found, correct, inside on your property.
It was interesting. I was walking in the woods adjacent to this vineyard, and I found it, and it was just so cool because I saw the shape, and I'm like, boy, that looks like a plow. And then when I saw Syracuse grape hoe, it was like, this is awesome. I found it, so neat. And I did a little research on it, and there actually is a fully intact one over at a museum in Hammondsport. So now there's 1.5 of them left. So I got a little bit of this one.
So we're close to having our own museum one day. All right, so we picked the grape, and now what happens?
Yeah, so we picked Riesling. We used to be 40 years ago. You called a nursery and you said, "I want Riesling," and you got whatever they had. Now, multiple clones. So we've got lots of choices, and a clone is just a variant of Riesling. So these are vinifera varieties, traditional European grapes, and through years of selection, people have found in their vineyard that these grapes might have a trait that shows itself in a particular vine in the vineyard. And if you like the trait, maybe a looser cluster, maybe a more upward growing or a more downward growing shoot, you can propagate the wood from that vine and you can form a new variant of Riesling. So there are dozens of clones of Riesling. We've done a lot of work over the decades on separate winemaking for various clones and tried to identify the most promising clones. This vineyard has 3 clones. We have clone 90 at the bottom that's in the Honeoye soil. We have clone 110 that is in the Lansing soil. And then we have clone 198 that is in some Lansing and some Howard. And then we again have clone 90 at the top of the vineyard. So that's our highest elevation clone up at the top, and the majority of that is in the Lansing soil. So again, last week we talked, or 2 weeks ago, we talked a little bit about the grafted vines and the necessity of having to cover that graft union. These clones are all grafted onto rootstock. So back up to our graft. What row are we on here? 77. Okay, so this is clone 90. So
Donna's asking if it's snowing. Yes.
Yes, it's snowing.
You'll definitely see it. Robin checking in from Virginia, drinking unoaked Chardonnay.
Oh, nice.
Another great Wagner wine as well.
Okay, so we picked the variety clone 90. So that's clone 90 Riesling from the graft union up. That is the scion of the vine. And that is the type of grape that we're trying to propagate. From that graft union down is what's called the rootstock. So the graft union, I like to explain it as a puzzle piece. So the two pieces of wood are joined together. It's called an omega cut, where they fit together very tightly like a jigsaw puzzle. And that's when the vines are cuttings. So very small caliper wood. They're propagated 1 year in a nursery. So these nurseries will do the grafting operation. They'll grow the vine 1 year in a nursery, and then when the vine is dormant after 1 year, they will dig up the vines, trim the tops, trim the roots, grade them, and that's how we get them. We get them from a nursery. They're 1 year old. So hopefully that might be our next vineyard video, but I don't want it to snow again for that one. But we are planting a vineyard here within the next week to 2 weeks. So we hope to get back out in the vineyard and actually show you that process. So this whole pandemic thing is created. We wanted to stay connected with all of our customers. And as long as you guys like what we're providing for content, we're having fun doing it. We're buying some toys here. Hopefully our audio is a little better this time. And we take for granted a lot of these things that we're doing out in the vineyard because we do them every day. We just take them for granted. But it's kind of interesting to explain it and show you really what goes into that bottle of Caywood East that we're going to be talking about in a little bit. So it's for us as a family. It's way more than than just the final product that goes into the package. It's everything from the soil, the drainage, the rootstock, the vines, and we haven't even talked about the viticultural processes that we're going through to train these vines and everything. But there's a ton of work that goes into it. We feel like we've learned a lot over the years, and we are 100% estate bottled. So every wine that you drink from Wagner Vineyards is from our grapes, and we have the ultimate control over how we grow them, what site we put them on, how close together we put the vines, how wide we put the rows, and really every step of the way, getting the timing right on all these vineyard operations. So that's why we've been really hustling the last 10 days to get the de-hilling done, because we flow right into the next job. We got to get these catch wires moved. So
one question we got coming in from Joyce regarding the soil. How do we care for the soil? Do we fertilize? What's the protocol there?
Yeah. So one of the really important things that we try to do is have this permanent sod cover in between the rows, and having those roots down in the soil holds the soil. And there's a lot of good things, a lot of microbes and things we can get in the soil by having plants growing in them. We do fertilize some of our varieties and not all of the varieties. We do continue to grow some French American hybrids, and those we tend to want to bump up the vine size. Most of our French American hybrids are own rooted. So we want to bump up the vine size a little bit.
That is no graft union, no rootstock. Yep.
So we'll put some nitrogen on them in the spring. The vinifera are a little bit different animals. So we've spent all that time establishing the deep root system, getting that drain tile down to hold the seasonal water table down. Grapevines don't like wet roots. So if you don't invest the money and the time up front to put that drain tile in, you're going to have shallow rooted vines that might suffer. You might have some small vines in some parts of the vineyard. Actually, wetter areas of the vineyard can become more drought stressed than drier areas, which is just such a difficult concept for people to understand. But wetter areas tend to have vines with shallower roots because they won't establish their roots down deep where that seasonal water table is coming up close to the surface. So conversely, when we get a drought year, those shallow rooted vines run out of moisture in the soil and they can suffer substantially. So can't really see it because these canes are all still dormant, but I do have a nice shot that shows just kind of the vineyard uniformity that we have on this site. So hopefully it looks like this in about 4 weeks. But you can see this is Seneca Lake. We're standing right.
I told you guys the lake was near here.
We're standing right about where the picture was taken, but you can see down these rows, and that's looking north down the rows, just the uniformity we have on vine size. And a big part of that is doing our homework up front, establishing deep root systems, and caring for these vines, and having uniform vine size really equates to excellent quality fruit. And one of the things that I think you're going to see with our wines is we're really pushing the limits of how ripe we can get this fruit. We're extending hang times, which means leaving fruit out late into the fall, and it can really develop some interesting and complex flavors when you give it a little longer on the vine. But you've got to you got to do all the steps during the growing season in order to have clean, ripe fruit going into the end of the race, basically.
Yeah, great reminder to everyone right now that it doesn't always look that pretty. There's a lot you have to be willing to put in the work 365 to get them to look as nice as they do in that photo.
Yeah, if you guys are thinking about establishing a vineyard, maybe you probably should come out and work in one for a year and then see if you still want to do it.
Come hold the camera for us next time. It seems like any time I say we're going to be out in the vineyard on Facebook, that's when the snow decides to come. So, all right. So we've talked about planting the Riesling now. How long is it until we're going to be able to actually get some Riesling off of these suckers, and then caring for them year after year? What's that process like, in particular here at Caywood East?
Yeah. So year one after a vineyard is established is growing roots. And so a lot of care to remove the blossoms from the vine. You don't want it to have any fruit in year one. Trying to get roots down in the ground. The vine is pretty vulnerable when you first plant it because it has a very small root system. Year two, more of the same. All the blossoms need to be removed from the vine because we don't want it to bear any fruit in year two. We hope, if the stars all align, that we will get a small crop in year three. So a ton of work goes in years 1, 2, and 3. The vines are all very low. They're planted. They're this big. They're coming out of the ground. All the work is hunched over, down on your hands and knees. During years, usually at the end of year 1, we establish the trellis. So if you look down through here, we have 8 strands of wire in each one of these rows. So these 2 strands are called our fruiting wires, and that's where we train our canes in the springtime. Those are fixed wires, high tensile wire stapled to the post, and we also have a fixed wire up on top, which is where we tie all of our trunks to. So we use twine to tie those trunks to get them nice and straight up to the top wire. And so I guess the next question is, why do we have 5 additional wires? And these 5 additional wires are called catch wires. So they're movable. And right now, this is the next step that we actually have to do in the vineyard, is moving these catch wires to their spring position. And you got to be a little bit careful to come out and come straight in, because we looked at those buds earlier, and those swollen buds, if you brush them with a wire, they'll pop right off. So we're going to move these catch wires.
No pressure, live video.
Yeah, didn't mess anything up there. So we're moving the catch wires down into the spring position, which is right in between the fruiting wires. We're going to leave these alone for right now. As these buds begin to develop into the growing season and get a little longer, hopefully we can show you this in a few weeks. These shoots will start to get longer, and under their own weight will start to splay out into the row. When they do that, we will take this movable catch wire and go back to this position here, and we'll trap all these shoots vertically upward. So all the shoots that go from the upper fruiting wire will be trained vertically upward. At the same point, we'll take this wire down here. This is called our rake wire. We're going to move the rake wire back down to the low position, and that will take all the shoots from this fruiting cane and we'll train them vertically downward. So this is a vertically divided canopy. It's called a Scott Henry training system, named after a grower in Oregon that came up with it. And the beauty of this is we can really display a huge area of canopy to sunlight. And by dividing the canopy vertically upward and vertically downward, we open up a nice fruit zone, and it's probably one of the main reasons we have success growing vinifera is we can really open up that fruit zone and display a large healthy canopy late in the season. And the canopy is your solar collector. So if you can double the area by utilizing all the space down here for leaves as well, you can really push the ripeness on these varieties. So the final set of catch wires, after the shoots are trained vertically upward through this set, they'll begin to grow longer and flop again out into the row. And we take this top set and we do a swoop with them. We gather up the shoots and we back up to here, and then the shoots will be trained vertically upward through this set and vertically upward through this set. They'll continue to grow, and then we come through with a special machine and we actually tip the canes off about 16 to 18 inches above the top wire. So when you, similar to how you saw the photo that we showed earlier, we really end up with a vertical wall of canopy that's got really super exposed fruit in the center of it.
Question from Paul. I think Paul's a little bit like me, maybe has a marching band background, really envious and loving the straight parallel lines.
Oh, yeah.
Asking how those are maintained. You know, I know we're hoping to show how we plant a vineyard in a couple weeks, which obviously plays a main role, but it, you know, as you just mentioned, also tying up will also have an impact on that and keeping them growing upwards, correct?
Yeah. So we used to hand plant these vines. My grandfather planted with a horse-drawn plow, would plow a furrow and put the vines in by hand. Each generation we've kind of made a little step in technology, and hopefully we'll show you here in a couple weeks. We now have a custom operation that comes in, and they're located actually right here in the Finger Lakes, and they travel all the way up and down the East Coast doing custom grape planting, and it is now GPS guided. So they'll come in, we'll tell them what we want for vine spacing and what we want for row spacing between the vines, and the only thing that holds the planter up is wet soil, or if they lose their satellites. So we'll be planting along, going 4 hours straight, and all of a sudden we'll come to a screeching halt and they say we lost our signal and we got to wait till the satellites realign, and then they go again. So it's extremely efficient, and we talk a lot about windows of opportunity to get jobs done, and planting the vines when the soil is right and being able to get them in and get them consistent depth. We talked a little bit about the graft union, and when we plant these, we want that graft union down close to the soil so that we're able to hill it up in the wintertime and get some of these Riesling buds underneath that soil to insulate them from the cold temperatures, but we also want it close enough to the soil where we can dehill and pull that dirt away in the springtime so that the scion doesn't form its own roots into the dirt. We want the rootstock to have the roots, and we want the scion to have the fruit. So that custom planting, GPS planting, gives us these extremely straight rows, uniform vine spacing, uniform height of the vines, and those things all contribute to the ability for us to automate some of these things. And we talked a little bit about that when we were talking about the dehilling. We've designed and built that dehiller. It's an automated operation. My Ian runs that, and we're able to do a lot of acres in one day because our vineyards are so uniform and straight.
Yeah, I was trying to get the diagonals as well. That's when you know you really. I feel kind of like Wes Anderson here, trying to get it so head on. But so yeah, no, it's just it's more than just aesthetically pleasing. There is a reason behind it. I'm curious. Could you talk a little bit about the decision to start making Caywood East as a single varietal? You know, obviously, you know, planted in 2005, 2012 was the first time that we produced a single varietal Caywood East. So, you know, during those years, was it just producing phenomenal fruit, or just it was fruit that was so different than the other Riesling blocks?
Yeah. Why don't we grab our glass while I'm talking about this?
You read my mind.
You can stay there. I'll grab the wine.
Let me see if I can get some of those great parallels as well. hoping everyone is staying warm and that no one else is in a place where there's this snowstorm. I know we have some people watching from Maine, so hopefully... Oh, look at...
Well chilled.
Yeah. Did not have to put that one in the fridge. This is spring in the Finger Lakes.
So
everybody.
yeah, it is snowing. This isn't a snow machine, guys. This is real. So, decision to make a single vineyard. One of the things I want to actually...
It's almost like an ice wine.
So planted in 2005, 2006, 2007 was our first vintage out of here. We have 6 blocks of Riesling throughout the farm. Some are down 700 feet above sea level is our lowest elevation site. That's also our youngest Riesling vineyard. And we have a 42-year-old Riesling vineyard, our heritage block on the home farm just below the winery. And then we have this, which is a 15-year-old block and at about 1,000 feet elevation. So having those different vineyards has really expanded our Riesling program. When I first came back to work with my dad, all of our Riesling wines came off of one block, and that's the 42-year-old block, the heritage block down below the winery. And we continued to make several different Rieslings at that point, and delicious wines. But they all had a similar taste profile coming off that one block of grapes. With now having these 6 blocks, different ages, different clone vines, some different rootstock selections, and we've really expanded the number of tools we have in the toolbox. So we harvest all these blocks separately, Alex. So Caywood East, we would probably be doing 6 to 8 harvest days in this vineyard. So we may harvest these 10 rows and they go in one tank in the winery. And 3 or 4 days from then we might harvest a quarter of one of the other vineyards and it goes in another tank in the winery. So at the end of harvest we end up with easily 15 tanks full of Riesling, but all coming from separate blocks on our farm, and we're able to vinify them all separately. The winemaking team does a lot of experimentation with different yeasts. We'll pick some early for different flavors, maybe some of the wines that we want a little higher acidity in. So this Caywood East is always our driest Riesling out of our whole stable of Rieslings. And so we really are looking for super ripe fruit, and we're sensitive to the acidity on here because it's such a dry wine. If we have high acid grapes, it's difficult to make a wine of this dryness and still maintain the balance in it. So super ripe fruit that we can get from this site up here. And so from 2007 to 2012, it was one of the tools in our toolbox. Several tanks came off of Caywood East, but they ultimately went into one of the other blends. So they went into our classic dry, our semi-dry, or our Riesling Select, which is slightly sweeter than our semi-dry. And we also make a Riesling ice wine. So it was in 2012 when we really had, I guess, a 5 to 6 year track record with this vineyard, and we're really identifying some good differences that we saw from some of our other blocks. And that's when we decided to try it and see if we could bottle wine just off this site and show how this site, higher elevation, very steep, a little bit different soils than we have in some of our other blocks, how it would express itself in a single vineyard Riesling. Coincidentally, 2012, the first year we decided to do it, was a hot, dry year, and we made a pretty fantastic 2012 Caywood East Dry Riesling. And if anybody still has any bottles left, it's still drinking great. We have very few bottles left in our wine library, but we do break one out every so often just to see how it's aging, and it's still drinking beautifully. So
yeah, let us know in the comments if you do have the 2012 still, because I might be stopping by.
So 12, 14, 17, 18, I believe, for the vintages that we've made it. So this is our 2018. We really, it has changed and evolved in styles, but it is always our driest Riesling, and it's going to be laser focused. This is on the edge. Our classic dry will be a little more round, a little softer. Where this one, we're definitely looking to push the envelope on edginess and just super aromas. When you're making a Riesling that is this dry, you have nothing to hide behind. Everything has got to be perfect, and the flavor's got to be there. If you're making a sweeter Riesling that's got a little residual sugar in there, it really does round out the mouthfeel. So one of the things that we strive for is some weightiness in this, and I think we've done a nice job on the 18, and it's just really drinking nice. How long has it been released for here now? A few months now.
A couple months, yeah. And it, upon its release, also scored a 92 in Wine Enthusiast, as I am wont to bring up to any and anyone who will listen. If you guys out there, if you have questions about this process, about this Riesling in particular, or any other questions about, winemaking, grape growing, be sure to put those in. A couple of people drinking 2017.
Oh, nice.
Out there.
How's the 17 drinking? Because it was drinking beautifully.
Yeah, let us know how those 2017s are tasting. While I asked John here about the 2018 growing season and how much that contributed. Anyone who lives in this area will remember 2018 for one major thing if you're in this here in Lodi. But what stands out to you, or what were the profiles of that 2018 growing year?
Yeah, well, it started out great, and
then
really, chugging into harvest, thinking midsummer, late summer that we were doing well. And mid-August, can't remember the day right off the bat, but mid-August we got 8 inches of rain in about 4 hours. And that's the most amount of rain we've had in a short period of time in my lifespan. And it really caused some havoc in the entire area. We had FEMA here, roads closed, people's houses destroyed, every culvert in the county was plugged up. I mean, it was definitely a weather disaster, and we're fortunate with a lot of the farm. We've kind of mitigated that surface water runoff. We were going to talk a little bit on this block, and that's one of the things we've done. That underground network of drain tile that we ran actually goes all the way through the vineyard, and then we have a standpipe above the vineyard. So we have kind of a dry pond up there. So surface water comes down and collects and goes down that standpipe. And then we also have some diversion ditches above the vineyard. So a lot of these vineyards, we've tried to mitigate the risk of surface water flowing across the soil, but we also have New York State 414 state highway bisects the farm, and then just below that the old Lehigh Valley Railroad bisects the farm, and those are both traveling north to south. So every one of these creeks and streams that flow, on our farm, they all flow east to west. So when the glacier receded, That glacier meltwater ran down these ravines, and it dug these steep ravines traveling from east to west. They flow into the lake. Every one of those waterways has got to go under the state highway and under the old railroad. So they all go through culverts to get that done. And during that rain event in August, every single one of those culverts plugged up, and it just created havoc, because that water that normally went down its waterway or its stream bed hit those plugged culverts, and it found a new path. And in a couple instances, the new path was through existing vineyards. So we had one particular Vidal Blanc vineyard that we make an ice wine out of, that beautiful vineyard that's 35 years old, and two culverts on 414 plugged up, and the streams jumped their course and ran down through the center of the vineyard. So we actually had 10 rows collapsed in that vineyard, because trees and debris collected on vines and collapsed one row, and they kind of dominoed and collapsed a bunch of them. So we got to work, and we recovered from the immediate flood damage that we had in August, but then the harvest just continued to be wet, and so we had to be extremely diligent. We had a lot of extra handwork in the vineyard to go through and sort fruit. So later on in some of the videos, we'll show as these vines develop, and we'll show developing clusters and everything. But we do a tremendous amount of handwork during the growing season to get uniform fruit in the vineyard, and in that year we had to do an individual separate pass ahead of harvest, looking at each individual Riesling cluster, because all that rain that we had in the fall actually swelled up the fruit, and we had some skins on the berries crack, and the skin on a is the natural defense against diseases, and once that skin cracks, you can get all kinds of things. You can get some nice things with botrytis, but that's not usually with a crackberry. Usually a crackberry leads to things that we don't like. You can get sour rot, you can get all kinds of things. So we had to be extremely diligent, drop any of that we saw. But the payoff was we were pretty pleased with what we actually did harvest. So we did that additional hand pass. We had some, if you can see, if you look down to the north here, Alex, we're on the flat right here, and to the north you could see how the rows dip. We call that a dip, and the water tends to be a little wetter in those dips. The vines tend to be a little bit more vigorous, and that is mainly where we had our issues, in those dips. So we had to be extremely diligent in those dips, dropping any fruit that we didn't feel met our quality standards, and we were rewarded with some pretty decent fruit. But it was definitely a tough harvest, and so I'm pretty pleased with what we achieved.
I look at it
here.
this way: any grape that could survive all that, it has to be a pretty special grape. So only the best made it into there. A couple questions coming through, so we'll run through some of these. First from GB Amanda: will you continue these live streams after the pandemic shutdown? Yes, we will. People seem to like them. We especially want to follow in the vineyard, the growing season. I know a lot of people aren't able to come into the winery often as much as they'd like to, so we want to continue to reach you guys. Might not be every week, might be once a month, might be every other week, but either way, we'll make sure that you know when the next one is. Might not necessarily be at this time either if John and the Vineyard crew is going to hop and do something and I want to capture it and want you guys to watch along. But we will let you know as soon as we know when those ones are coming. Question from Paul: do you ever have to replace the posts? How long do they last? What wood species?
Yeah, so good question. These are southern yellow pine. They're pressure treated. They are about approximately 4 inches in diameter, and they have a 40-year lifespan. So we are in the process right now. We spoke about our heritage block below the winery that's 42 years old. The vines have basically outlived the trellis in that vineyard. So we are faced with a decision. A lot of people ask, how long does a vinifera vineyard last? And the standard answer is 40 years. I've heard that answer given so many times. We have a 42-year-old block, and we love it. We love the flavors. We love these old vines that are in balance with the site. But unfortunately, it's outlived the trellis, so we are actually going to go through and replace the trellis, which is extremely labor intensive to do a new trellis in there. But so we've done this. This is established in '05, and a lot of work goes into these trellis. We have 60,000 posts on the farm, and the posts, when my grandfather and great grandfather were doing it, we actually grew our own posts. So they used eastern red cedar. They grew native on the farms, and we also planted black locust. And so they would harvest logs out of those woods and use them. We still have some vineyards with locust posts in them and cedar posts in them, but they're tough to work with, and kind of on the scale that we're doing things on now. We purchased these, and so they come from down south, and they go through the same pressure treating process that the wood on your deck would go through. But we use a large diameter end post, sink this in the ground. These are rebar anchors that are 4 feet in the ground with buried concrete on them. And by having those 8 high tensile wires that are attached to here, we've really got extreme forces on the ends of the rows. So
is that what causes the lean here that you see on?
Well, no, that's to do with the design. And so we lean them back, and then we secure them with anchor wires. So hopefully that's pretty straight if you sight down through there, because that's not bad for a 15-year-old vineyard, and we try to get things straight, and we're pretty we like things straight, let's put it that way. It pays to have a nice tight trellis system. It keeps the posts upright a lot better. If you have slack wires, you can tend to have posts leaning down the hill. So I mean, this is pretty extreme weather here. I mean,
I'm sure you guys can probably pick up on the wind coming through on the microphone as the wind starts to pick up around here.
I feel kind of like the weatherman that they send out into the storm. That's like, like this, bracing against the wind. But no, it's I hope you guys are liking these things. We're having fun doing them, and if it gets boring at any time, just tell us. We're done. We've had enough. But no, I think when you can get out in the vineyard and talk about what actually goes into making these wines, it's a lot more interesting than just saying, oh, they put that in a green bottle this year and it's got a different color capsule. I mean, there's so many things that, decades of work and decisions before we can actually get to that point.
It is a nice label, though. I do gotta say.
So our Caywood East is in what's called a fire-don bottle. So this is not a paper applied label on this bottle. We send the bottle out to what's called a decorator, and they actually put the ink on the bottle and run it through a furnace to bake it onto the bottle. So nice package. You'll see all of our reserve wines, our reserve Chardonnay, our 2 ice wines, our Meritage, our reserve Pinot, the Caywood East, and the Fathom are all in the fire-don glass. So yeah, trying to really tie the package together. It's a beautiful wine. We are fortunate to be able to send these wines out to these national publications, and really we can tell you all day long that we love them and they're great wines, but when you get these national publications saying, hey, these wines are something special, and really getting that validation is great, and we hope you guys enjoy them. We've always tried to make wines that over delivered on quality. I mean, that was really my dad's. My dad was Bill Wagner, and his philosophy was we're going to make the best quality wine, and we're going to charge a fair price for it, and hopefully we continue that to this day. And I have other winery owners saying, "No, geez, you should raise your price on this," or raise your. And I'm like, I want to over deliver. So Caywood East is $18 a bottle, and if with a 92 in the Wine Enthusiast, that is what we would call over delivering. You know, we're definitely delivering a high quality wine. It's an awesome representation of what we can do on this particular site right here. And you know, that's what we're all about. We're 100% estate bottled. We want to showcase what this little strip of land here on the east side of Seneca Lake can produce, farmed with a lot of the techniques that we've developed over well over 100 years in my family of doing it. And so we continue to learn, we continue to evolve, and we're doing everything we possibly can to bring you the highest quality wine that we can make. And hopefully we can have a little fun along the way and show you how we get there. And maybe you'll have a little bit more understanding of all the different steps it takes to get there. So
yeah, for sure. Question here from Maggie. Can you talk about what you look for in terms of taste early in the winemaking for any specific vintage? When you're tasting with the winemakers, what is it you're looking for?
Yeah, so interesting. We have a fun day in about late January, anywhere through mid-February, and we individually will taste every single tank of Riesling that we have in the winery. So all those different vineyards that we harvested separately, vinified separately, did our yeast trials. We'll take a tank sample from all of them. So we usually end up with roughly a dozen, and we will taste them blind. So winemakers will draw the samples. We'll do a double blind so that the winemakers don't know either what the samples are. So one will take the sample, another one will put the labels on. So with that double blind, we'll all taste through them. Our entire winemaking team, Lee, my nephew, and we also have Ann Raffetto and John Herbert, who were our co-winemakers for over 3 decades. John retired about 7 years ago, and Ann just retired a year ago. So they also come back for this tasting. So it's a really fun day where we have this brain trust of winemakers. 4 of our winemaking team, all in the same room. Myself, my sister Laura, who's co-owner with me, and Alex was there. We had Aaron. We had my wife Debbie. We had about 8 or 10 of us, and we taste through every single Riesling that we have in there. And it's awesome just to see the versatility that we can get off of one grape variety, because you'd think, oh, it's Riesling. And I hear it all the time, all Rieslings are sweet. Well, no, they're not all sweet. This wine is bone dry. It is very dry, and so it's a little difficult to taste those new wines because some of them are cloudy, they're tank samples, and they're not polished and finished and filtered. But early on, we can really see the kind of which wines have the weightiness, and like this is one that we're really looking for weight in, because we don't have any residual sugar. Some of those, the semi-sweet Riesling, which is our Riesling Select, is got about 3.5% residual sugar. So that has some natural weightiness just from that residual sugar in there. So the mouthfeel gets filled out. These dry wines, we really need some length and some weightiness to them. So we don't want anything to be watery. So we kind of identify potential for, oh, that one's got some nice weightiness to it. We all comment on the nose. Oftentimes, different people will pick up different things in the nose. So I might say, well, boy, I get a lot of stone fruit out of this, and somebody else is picking up floral. So we'll go through, we usually taste all of them pretty quietly, take our notes, getting the mouthfeel, getting the flavors, getting the aromas, and then we'll discuss them one by one at the end. And no blending decisions are made at that point, but we just get kind of a stake of where we're at. Where's our benchmark of all these wines that we have to work with for the vintage? And then the winemakers really start to go to work. What we typically do is we'll make our Caywood East first, because we have the fewest number of components to work with. We're only using fruit from this block, so we might only have 3 tanks of Riesling from Caywood East. So they'll make that blend first because it's the most difficult to make. It's the driest. It's got to be laser focused. We've got to have we got to have a lot of flavor. We got to have a lot of depth and complexity in it. So that's why a lot of hang time in the vineyard, really getting super ripe fruit and expressing the site. And then after that, they'll typically make our classic dry blend, which could be a blend of any of the 6 different vineyard blocks that we have on the farm. So we tasted that. We tasted the 17, what about 6-7 weeks ago when we first started the virtual series. And I love the 2017 dry, just a great expression of all the blocks on the farm. But it is a little more rounder, a little softer than this wine is. This Caywood East, I just love it with food, because it just cuts through a lot of different food flavors. It's very refreshing, crunchy, edgy, running out of adjectives.
Wiry. I'm trying to think what other. There's a lot that the Riesling lovers of the world.
And a lot is talked about minerality with these dry Rieslings, and I think Anne Raffetto.
Nervy, that's another one.
Yeah, Anne Raffetto actually described the minerality to me as wet stone.
Right.
And if you think about that flavor, that if you just took a stone down at the lake and that wet stone and put it, that's we get a lot of that out of
Now's the time where we all walk down. We're gonna all taste some rocks. No, but it's interesting too. You brought up you guys are looking for weight during that tank sample more than, say, we're not all sniffing those, smelling those wines trying to smell exactly like the previous vintage final product tastes like, right? Even from a ripeness level, these wines are still going to be spending some time before they go in the bottle, so you don't want a wine that's already showing, like it's at its peak.
Yeah, we oftentimes will have a favorite in that tasting, and we'll say, boy, that one's soft, that's drinking great, and the winemakers will often remind me, well, we don't want it that soft going into the bottle because we might not release this for 2 years from now. So we want to have it a little edgy, because that's what we get from the bottle age. Some time in the bottle really softens some of those rough edges, and this is drinking nice now, but it's going to be drinking nice in 10 years from now too. You'll notice all of our Rieslings are in Stelvin closure. So we touched on that when we talked about the 17. Got a little mud on there from my gloves too.
It all adds to the terroir.
It does. So yeah, after a lot of testing that we did internally with different wines in the winery, we really identified the ability for the Stelvin closure to maintain the flavors in these wines, and really extend the ageability of the wines, and make sure that every single bottle that we sell is uniform and the quality is there. That's not a knock on cork at all, because we continue to use cork on our dry red vinifera. We actually like kind of how those red vinifera's develop with a little more air exchange through a cork closure. We really like how the Stelvin finishes our Riesling wine and how they age under Stelvin. So couple customers, longtime customers, kind of gave me a funny look when we switched to Stelvin back in 2009 or 2010, and I talked to him a little bit about, hey, we did this so that every single bottle you get is going to be 100% the exact same as we intended it when it went into the bottle. And one piece natural cork has been plagued with some issues with cork taint. We have addressed that. The cork we use for all our dry red vinifera is a Dion cork, so it's natural cork, but it's been treated for cork taint, and we feel it's that engineered cork is a little more uniform and has the ability to age very well as well. But for the Rieslings, we love how they age under Stelvin. This is not a cheap closure for us. It actually costs us more to put a Stelvin on a Stelvin outfitted bottle than it does for us to put a cork and a capsule on a cork outfitted bottle. So we hope that you guys appreciate the consumer convenience with it, but it is a high quality closure, engineered to really maintain the freshness that wine has when the winemakers put it in the bottle.
Suggestion from GB about doing a live stream just basically throughout the year and making a wine from the very start. That's that's a great idea. Definitely something I think we're going to try and do, between what's happening out in the vineyard and what's happening in the winery, in the production side. I know, a lot of you guys tuned in with our talk a couple weeks back with Kevin and Jess on the winemaking side of things. So we'll check back in with them again. They'll love it, I'm sure. They love getting on camera and talking. So
we're being forced to do stuff that we're not necessarily that good at. I feel like I know sort of what I'm doing about growing grapes, but this is new. And
modesty. And
we're having fun learning. Some are a little bit more willing to talk than others, but no, we want to stay connected to our customers, and this has been a tough time. And I said before that the winery is just it's eerie because we've never been closed for more than we closed for 3 days out of the year, and now it's just
look at how the wind is.
Oh, it's tearing up my tile map there, so we don't know where the tile is. Save the map. So anyways, we're hoping to we're getting a little bit more direction from New York State as the weeks progress here. We continue to be one of the counties that is least affected by it. We hope that there's been some talk of the different phases of opening back up, and we've got some great plans in place. We've been extremely busy. We've got a lot of new improvements in the winery, in the cafe. So we haven't been sitting idle. A lot of work in the vineyard. Obviously, the work in the vineyard has continued. But just for instance, certain things in the winery, we're talking about touchless faucets, things we can do where people can have more reserved individual tastings. We talked about our OCC, which is our Octagon Cellars private tasting room that we've made. So we're going to have a lot more tasting options where we haven't got it completely worked out yet, but there's going to be the ability to reserve a tasting for a small group. We envision when we are able to host customers again that they will be much smaller tastings, which might not be a bad thing at all. So it'll be a more private experience. We do have a lot of outdoor seating. We have a lot of picnic tables outside, so we have the ability to really spread people out. Same thing in the cafe, big dining room. We have a lot of different tables that we can spread out. We are redoing all our railings on the deck over there, so when you guys are able to come back, I think you're going to see a lot of pretty cool changes. We're pretty excited about things, and hoping to get back to somewhat more normal here at some point. And maybe a little warmer would be nice.
Just a touch.
I don't want it to get, I'm not greedy, I'm not asking for 80, but just not 28. So maybe I'll just say hopefully maybe like 32 tonight would be good.
Yeah, we'll take that.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously we will continue to keep you guys up to date as much as we know. Those of you who live in New York know that Governor Cuomo will be readdressing the New York on pause next Friday, a week from today, because of our region being, and I know I've said this before. Oh, yeah, sure. I'm gonna take my glove off. While I talk, you guys can see my. Hold on one second. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So this is fun. All right. So what I was saying was on the 15th, next Friday, we should know more about whether our region can start to go through the first of 4 phases for unpausing. As of right now, we would be slated to be in phase 3 of reopening with at least 2 weeks between every phase. There's a push for wineries across the state to be included in phase 2, which would have us potentially open 2 weeks earlier. But we just don't know yet, and we will let you guys know as soon as we know. But either way, what we're working hard at right now is making sure there is that plan in place that when the time comes, everybody's going to feel as safe as possible. Everyone's going to be able to come in and enjoy themselves while not having to worry about additional touch points and things like that. And I see here on the comments, Skip says it's 56 in Maine.
Wow.
We're going up to Maine. We're going to pack things up and head up there. Where in Maine where is it? 56 degrees. That's nice.
Yeah, so we're about 33 to, we were between 33 and 34 here when we started the thing. So it's definitely not gotten any warmer, I don't think.
Yep,
but
the snow is sticking as well.
We were hoping to be able to show Seneca Lake, which
it is there somewhere.
It's that gray area over the trees, but really, Seneca Lake, we didn't talk quite as much about it as I wanted to, just probably because we couldn't see it. But out of the 11 Finger Lakes that we're surrounded by, half the volume of the water is in Seneca Lake, and that's really key to the fact that it hasn't frozen since 1912, and got a couple pretty cool things here that we can finish up with. But so this is 2015. It's a picture of a satellite photo of all of the Finger Lakes. And I'm going to spill my wine here, which I don't want to do.
That would be a...
All right. I'll take out my... So Lake Ontario's up here. All of our Finger Lakes are going across, and you can see they're all frozen except for Seneca and the center part of Cayuga. And these shallower Finger Lakes will freeze, and the last time Seneca froze was 1912. And when we have, there's another one that shows even a lot of ice forming on Lake Ontario, again from 2015, a little later in the winter. All the Finger Lakes frozen except for Seneca, 40 miles, 39 miles of Seneca wide open. And now only the very center part of Cayuga is open. So our farm is located right there, and we've got a prevailing northwest wind coming across that open body of water. And that open body of water really helps to moderate our winter temperature. And if it freezes over, we lose that effect because we've got ice cover over the lake. So it really is key to most of the great growing regions throughout the world are near some body of water or on some super air drainage sites like this, steeper sites.
Well, the way my luck's going, the next time we're out in the vineyard, it will freeze over or something like that. So we'll have to test our luck.
You guys have any other questions?
Yeah, I'll wait. If you guys have any other questions, we're still here. We'll still answer them. I know there's a bit of a delay, so we'll wait for those to come on through. But A reminder also, the 2018 Riesling Dry. John talked a little bit about the 2017. We're on to the 2018 Riesling Dry now, which we got to taste just a couple days ago. And, definitely, as John mentioned, it's a lot rounder. But the aromatics on that wine, that it felt like summer just smelling that wine. And very excited for you guys to come on out or take an order right now at home and try that 2018 and just start to, get a 2018 Caywood East as well and kind of taste those side by side and see the difference that we're talking about, the nervy, the acidic nature of the Caywood versus the dry Riesling, which is still in and of itself a dry Riesling.
Yeah, and all of our Rieslings have the International Riesling Foundation sweetness scale on the back. Show you that again quickly. We touched on it when we talked about the dry. So here's our IRF scale, and you can see that little pointer there. That shows that this is a dry Riesling. So this came out of a group getting together. I don't know, 6-8 years ago, and every Riesling producer gets the comment all the time that I don't like Riesling because they're too sweet. And it's so frustrating for us because the wine can be made in a very dry style. It can be made in semi-dry. It can be made in a dessert style. And we really felt as Riesling producers, we needed some way to convey that to people. And this scale really does that. So if you're in a liquor store, you pick up a Riesling. If they have adopted this IRF scale, you can pick it up and get a true indication of whether it's a dry Riesling, semi-dry, semi-sweet. A lot of wines, you may pick it up and it might just say Riesling, and it's frustrating as a consumer to not know whether you're buying a dry wine or a semi-dry, and this IRF scale really solves that issue. And so we adopted the IRF scale immediately when it came out. We had used a sweetness scale previous to that, but this one we felt was going to gain more popularity, and we think it's a great tool for consumers to be able to identify and get the right wine that they're looking for.
Well, we're starting to clear up a little bit. I was hoping maybe we'd get probably another hour or so. And unfortunately, I can't say that we'll be here.
You can see the horizon now.
You can start to kind
of. You
look
to the north. We got about a 20-mile view here, and we can see the horizon on the other side of the lake, and actually I can see it if you look straight west. Mm-hmm. You see the tree line.
Yeah.
And then you see the next little section above the tree line that's a little lighter. That's the lake.
Yeah, so I think it's even. Just live right now on video, you're starting to see a squall kind of move across, and you can starting to clear up a little bit. Why don't I take this time to explain next week's virtual tasting, and maybe by the time we're done with that, we'll be able to see the lake. Who knows? So next week, we're going to go back to the Wagner Valley Brewing side of things. Eric Norson, our head brewmaster, will join me, and we're going to be doing a vertical tasting of our the Triple Bock Reserve, which is a beer that is one of the flagship beers of Wagner Valley Brewing, certainly one of the most luscious and decadent of the beers. So we're really excited to taste the newest bottling, as well as some past ones as well. If you live in New York, there's going to be info on Facebook. You can get that beer shipped to you with a flat shipping rate. So you can call us here, and we will get that to you. And then the next week, we'll see what, as John mentioned, there's some plantings going on. I don't want to jinx it, because then it'll snow in 2 weeks if I say that's what we'll be doing. So we'll wait and see, and we will let you guys know. Maybe we'll be back out in the vineyard and have some bud break, and we'll be doing a lot more fun things than this. This was fun, though. This was a great time. So that's going to do it for us. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, and leave you guys here. I'll walk over. I'll get one last view down here through a row. You see kind of the dips there that we were talking about earlier, and why drainage tiles are so important. Kind of bring it full circle here, as you have to deal with those dips. So as William says, yeah, no more snow, no snow, little snow for now. We're hoping that was the worst of it, and that we'll come out unscathed in the morning. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time.